now is we are back to the sub-amendment of MP Blakey's amendment to PS Beach's motion.
Okay, and so do I call the floor?
You do.
I would seek unanimous consent to give up the floor to Adam and then request to be given the floor back.
Agreement on that? Yep, okay. Yes, okay. MP Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What we had here with the minister, what is billed to be the hottest ticket in town, so I need to thank the Prime Minister's office for allowing the minister to come. I understand that this committee is not functioning very well. I think Mr. Blakey made a very wise recommendation to the minister that when invitations come from the committee, that the minister take them seriously. I can't for the life of me understand why a minister of any portfolio would ignore an invitation from the committee blatantly. Yes, Ms. Zurwich is correct that the minister has appeared here 3 or 4 times in the last 12 months or whatever the number is. The fact is it's been the will of the committee to invite the minister here. And yes, we can't compel the minister, and that's completely fair under our Westminster system. But that the minister seems to, the only conclusion that we can draw is that the minister seems to think that this committee and Parliament is an inconvenience. If the minister is going to continue to ignore invitations from the committee won't function. And I'm going to say we will not provide UC, because as long as I'm sitting in this seat right here, I will not provide UC to move on any piece of government legislation or study or anything until it looks like there's some more respect for the will of the committee. Now there's enough blame to go around here to spread it from here to Aurelia. But the fact of the matter is we're sitting in this position because a minister of the Crown feels it's an inconvenience to appear before a committee to answer questions. And even when the minister appears, now it's one thing to get her into the room, and even when the minister appears, to not actually answer a question such as, what is the government spending on interest on the debt? If anyone wants to go and look at Secretary Yellen in the US and how they run Senate committee hearings and how their secretaries actually answer questions, if you watch that and watch what just happened here a couple hours ago, it's shameful. And if I'm ever in the position, lucky enough to be in the position on the other side of the table, I hope somebody reminds me of that when I'm answering questions. The second point, I feel sorry for my government colleagues because they have to defend the minister not wishing to appear in front of committee. If the member from Malpeque, when he was the Minister of Finance, could not answer or refused to answer what one of the top 3 spending line items in PEI were when he was the Minister of Finance, I'm pretty sure he'd be out of a job. And furthermore, there is competent parliamentary secretaries all through this government who actually try to answer questions when they're asked. They should be in cabinet. The number one thing that I hear back from constituents in terms of feedback from what happens in this place if they stumble upon late at night any of the hearings is that why does nobody answer a question? And that's for everybody, that's for all parties, not just the government. Why does everybody not answer a question? If anyone went to watch the Committee of the Whole last night and saw the Minister of Housing not even answer what time it was, it seems like it's a game. And people wonder why we have no respect for parliamentary institutions and why the respect is going down. It's because it's being treated like a joke. So I hope that if I'm ever lucky enough to be on the other side of the table, that I'll be reminded of this by somebody. But the fact that we have to defend a minister's right to ignore invitations from the committee and then to be kind of treated like, oh, well, I'm gracing you with my presence. I'm not going to answer any questions. Oh, and I don't give in to bullies. It wasn't a bully request that the committee made when we passed a motion to have the minister come along with the bank governor every quarter until inflation comes down in the control range. That is like the most simplest explanation. I can't understand for the life of me why we're in a position where the committee can't work solely on the basis of a minister not wanting to come. Now, it's possible maybe the conspiracy theory is true. I've spent too much time with some of my friends that it is the Prime Minister's office that doesn't want the minister to come, but she's obviously quite capable of coming. She's trusted to sit in rooms and negotiate NAFTA or CETA and go to G7 meetings, but can't come to a parliamentary committee. I'm a bit frustrated with the fact that it's all of a sudden our fault on this side of the table for the position we're in. Sure, we could negotiate better, and sure, we maybe could go along to get along a bit more, but we were the party who agreed to pre-study the bill. We didn't last year. That was out of good faith. And then to find out that the minister will appear but won't tell us for how long is completely unhelpful to the functioning of this committee. And there won't be a government study passed from here on in without an invitation to the minister. There won't be a motion passed at this committee without an invitation to the minister. Every single motion we pass at this committee will include an invitation to the minister until it is better received and respected. For someone, and I have the deepest respect for somebody who's been put in a position where the Prime Minister obviously has given the Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister significant responsibility, and she has a very tough job. But one of those responsibilities is to face questions and to be able to tell the Canadians the government story. It's either they're ashamed of the story or they find this place an inconvenience. They can't be both. And it's unbelievably frustrating, not just for me, because nobody really cares about how we feel here, but for anybody watching, to watch somebody who cannot even list the top two of the top three spending items. It's not that she doesn't know. She obviously knows where we spend our money. Is that she refuses to answer a question from a Conservative. We're not going to have a fully functioning committee until we find ourselves in a better place. And we're not going to go travel on pre-budget consultations. We're not going to go travel anywhere else. And we're not going to pass any government study as long as I'm sitting here and we do not have the minister respecting invitations to the committee. We have a lot better things to do and hearing from witnesses than to sit here and talk out the clock for 25 hours. Unfortunately, the opposition only has one tool, and it's a pretty blunt tool. If we want the committee to work better, I would implore government members, not because I said it, but to take the advice of Mr. Blakey. The minister seemed to take it, but was a little coy about whether she would accept another invitation from this committee. The only time the minister has showed up, the only times the minister has showed up to this committee is to pass legislation. to pass government legislation, not because the committee's invited her. And this notion that the minister was unaware, we weren't able to invite her for 2 hours because the committee didn't pass the motion is complete BS. It's not possible that that's the case. I understand we have resources till 12 p.m. tonight, but I know that we've been sitting here for a long time. But people deserve, and if you're not going to do it for us or like parliamentarians, people deserve to know that ministers can be held accountable to the committees. If the government had a majority on parliamentary committee or had won a majority in the last election, go nuts. But the truth is, we've had multiple invitations to a minister of the Crown to show up, even on supplementary estimates, which I actually understand. If a minister is invited on supplementary estimates, you can compel them to show up on supplementary estimates. Now, if we don't want to create a precedent of making it contingent on passing, going to clause by clause without having a minister show up, we're not actually doing a really good job of setting a precedent, because the only precedent we've been setting is that ministers can just tell committees to go fly a kite. So I don't know why any minister would show up to any committee now. The precedent is set. You don't need to. You only need to show up if you want to pass legislation. And even then. But there's plenty of other capable members that would answer questions and show up to committee, I'm sure. The parliamentary secretary to the housing minister last night should be the housing minister, based on the ability of her to answer questions from all sides of the House. But that it must be some kind of game where they decide, no matter what the question is, I'm not going to answer. So if we want a better functioning committee, you don't have to run back and say, oh, the Conservatives are making this recommendation. All we have to do is take the recommendation, and the minister has to take and listen to the recommendation of Mr. Blakey. But we'll be in the same position in the fall, in next year, the next time there's a bill, BIA2, if we're in a position where the minister is not answering invitations to committee. And it's not extortion. It's not bullying. It's asking for the minister to respect the will of committee, which is something that the parliamentary secretary, Mr. Beach, has been reminding us that it's the majority position of the committee to pass his motion. It's the majority position of the committee. Well, it's also the majority position of the committee to invite the minister. So if the parliamentary secretary wants to test the room again on unanimous consent, I'll leave the table so that I'm not here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.